All right. Someone is called in. If you can put your name in the chat, just so I can be sure I give you credit for attending, I would appreciate it. First question. Ed is working on making recommendations to increase the value of a solution. He has discovered that different stakeholder groups may have common needs that can be met with a single solution. What recommendation is the best option for Ed? So before we go to the answers, he's discovered this. So which task is he in?
It's second. Let me check how it's called.
Analyze performance measures?
Communists.
That's the second one.
It is in the question itself. Recommendation to increase value of a solution.
Okay.
That's the fifth one.
Yeah, the last one.
The last one, yeah.
Okay. So the recommend actions to increase solution value. The definition or the purpose of that is understand the factors that create differences between potential value and actual value, and to recommend a course of action to align them. So we think we're on the right task. So what recommendation is the best for Ed under these circumstances? Would it be to retire the solution, eliminate redundancy, avoid waste, or identify additional capabilities?
Eliminate redundancy.
Or maybe avoid waste. I mean, I can think about B and C both.
So B is mentioned in the book, I think, is redundancy, eliminate redundancy.
That is one of the recommendations that is possible.
As well as the avoid waste.
Avoid waste is in that same list.
Yeah.
Different goal.
Think about the question though. This is a slam dunk. At least it should be. God knows what Watermark will do.
He's discovered that groups have common needs and can be met with a single solution. Anybody want to talk about why eliminate redundancy is better than avoid waste?
Because if multiple people are using different solutions for the same thing, that's redundant.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's test it.
Directly addresses the question. You shouldn't even have to know what's in the book. Take any slam dunks you can get.
All right. Next, the target time for creating printable labels is 4 minutes per 100 labels. Current results range from 3.4 minutes to 7.8 minutes. So this is target, and this is current results. For this scenario, what is the term that best describes the discrepancy between the expected and actual performance? If we're doing this thing, what task are we doing?
Analyze performance.
I think you're right. So would it be an error, a defect, a known error, or a variance?
Variance.
I will say variance as well.
Okay, let's test it. You are correct. Very good. So it's a variance.
Look at that section if we can, because that is classic Six Sigma stuff.
Yes, it is. I have the BABOK open here somewhere.
172. Yep, it's so
what page are we on?
Performance versus value, risks, trends, accuracy, and variance.
Oh, goodness.
Just so you know, the whole point of Six Sigma is you reduce waste by limiting the variation. So less stuff is out of range. That's the whole goal.
Okay, good to know.
Ideally, head the system off you improve it so it cannot make mistakes.
Okay. Too many things open. Okay, so we got that one right. Who are the stakeholders that can contribute to measuring solution performance? So measuring solution performance, we know what the task is. Since this is our first day, measuring solution performance purpose. Define performance measures and use data collected to evaluate the effectiveness of a solution in relation to the value it brings. So let's think about who the stakeholders would be for that. Would it be this domain subject matter expert, documentation subject matter expert, regulator, sponsor, user experience expert? Would it be supervisor, director, or end user, domain subject matter expert, customer, sponsor, developer? The UI expert, developer, regulator, domain subject matter expert, supervisor, tester, or the customer, domain subject matter expert, project manager, sponsor, and regulator. Let's go ahead and eliminate these roles that aren't in the BABOK. Which ones would they be?
So I would eliminate B, director. It sounds strange.
It does sound strange.
Yeah, supervisor, director. We don't
Yeah,
have those
supervisor
roles in Java.
as well. So yeah, B and
Okay.
C eliminate. So
Mhm.
between A and D. So
When was the last time you saw a documentation subject matter expert?
Yeah, go
Oh.
with D.
E.
Maybe they're a SME, I don't know, but this one seems, at least it has the ones that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
What
So let's
about
go back
A?
to the, I'm sorry, say that again.
What about A?
It
It's-
has a documentation subject matter expert. There's not a role like that
Okay.
in the BABOK.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, let's test it, see if I'm wrong. Let's see what it says about it. Documentation subject matter expert and user experience expert do not apply.
I'm curious, is that even a thing in real life? Okay. I'm like,
What there's going to be a company out there that they're going to have it.
really?
I know that there are user experience people that is their role, but that's not what the BABOK
UX.
is.
When
Yep.
people say UI, UX,
Yep, this is
UX
UX.
is user experience.
And if you've never looked into user experience, the user journey, personas, things like that, they're very valuable as a business analyst. It's just, that is not a role in the BABOK, especially for this task. Okay, Caitlin is a BA who has recommended that she performs a enterprise cultural assessment to understand why stakeholders aren't using a new solution to the extent forecasted. Which of the following is the best way to define enterprise culture? So we need a definition for this right here. If we're talking about enterprise culture and enterprise cultural assessment, we're probably on this task right here. Definition, possible. They are deeply rooted beliefs, values, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. They are deeply rooted beliefs, values, actions, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. So that's the only difference there. They are deeply rooted beliefs, actions, thoughts, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. They are deeply rooted beliefs, values, thoughts, and norms shared by members of an enterprise. So this one doesn't have actions.
Maybe A is a correct. Beliefs, values, and norms.
Okay. Anybody think different?
This action sounds weird, and it's in B and C. That's why I eliminate that. And thoughts.
Yeah. Anybody else for A?
Well, they are very similar and very difficult. I mean, generally, deeply rooted beliefs, values, and norms also ultimately lead to actions. But
Thoughts lead to actions. You're right. But this is a quote out of the BABOK.
Yeah, but which one is correct according to BABOK? I don't know.
Okay.
I can be wrong, but I'm tempted to go with D instead.
Why do you like D better, Kasi?
I feel like for me, it lead more to action than A.
It's thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Okay, let's check.
Okay. Let's test it. Thoughts are not part of the definition, and it is deeply rooted beliefs, values, and norms. That is the definition of enterprise culture.
Okay, only these three.
Mhm.
Yes, only these three. It's better to ask and explore why one answer is better than the other than to just say, oh, okay, because you're not going to learn from the oh, okay. Let's explore it. You are a BA trying to understand how the organization structure will be impacted by a solution. What do you need to assess? So we know that every single thing, every single task in this chapter, there is a solution of some sort, either partial or complete. So we know we're in chapter 8. We're trying to understand how an organization's structure will be impacted by a solution. So what task are we in?
Maybe anal.
Perhaps the last task.
Recommend.
Yeah,
I think so.
recommendation actions.
Let me pull this chart over. I'm going to talk to y'all about this then. Whenever you have a problem, anything in this chapter that is a problem, we call it a limitation. So if we have a solution that has a problem of any sort, it's called a limitation. However, if the problem is outside of the solution, it's an enterprise limitation. So this is within the solution, this is outside of the solution. And within enterprise limitations, we have organizational structure changes. Enterprise cultural assessment, stakeholder impact analysis, which includes functions, locations, concerns. Then you got organizational structure changes and operational assessment. So when we're talking about how to understand the organization's structure will be impacted, I'm thinking it's going to be with that in that task. So the options are formal reporting structures, the organizational hierarchy, alliances and matrix reporting, and formal and informal relationships.
I'm thinking about B because A is kind of subset of B. I mean, if we assess the organizational hierarchy, so A is also seems to be within that.
So I would eliminate D for sure. It's formal and informal relationships. It's especially in formal relationships. It sounds weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it what it sounds like or what you know from the Babok?
It's my gut feeling.
Okay, that's your gut. Michelle, Sandra, what do y'all think?
I think
I'd
it's
go with
organizational
B.
hierarchy
Yeah.
because that's actually a structure. And I've never heard of alliance and matrix reporting.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let's
A matrix
test it.
is a thing.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. I didn't expect
Okay.
that.
So organizational hierarchy is another way of saying formal reporting structures, which is what A was.
okay.
And this restricts the assessment to just formal reporting structures, but doesn't reveal pertinent information. What it's talking about here is if you ever worked in person at a place and you knew that this person everybody went to his cube whenever they had a problem. He might not have been the boss, but he was one of the people that had influence.
So you mean like the administrative assistant who knows everything in every organization?
Yes. And nobody reports to her, but they go to her to say, hey, how do I do this and stuff?
Because everyone knows that's the person that runs the organization, makes the organization run.
Right. Alliances and matrix reporting, these are informal relationships, and you've got to know that this is a real thing in the Babok. but we're talking formal and informal relationships is the correct answer. We need to assess the formal and informal relationships when we talk about the organizational structure, whenever we're talking about a solution. Okay? I think this is what we had chosen originally, so I'll keep it.
So what is the
Even it-
informal, excuse me, what is the
I'm sorry.
informal relationships in an organization?
Yeah. Can you give one example, if possible?
Sure. I'm trying to think of one that's business related more than the one I'm thinking of.
Just described it.
Yeah. So as an executive assistant to two vice presidents, people came to me to find out things like, would they like this more than that, and where to go for this, and what are instructions for this. Nobody reported to me, but people came to me because I had the information. It was an informal relationship. So whenever you're talking about a solution that, say, if you want to apply for a promotion and we're going to institute Workday, and up to now you've had to come talk to somebody in HR to apply for a promotion, and it's going to change the way you do that. You're going to have to go through Workday. You're going to have to look at how is that going to affect everybody. That person in HR isn't going to get people coming to them all day long anymore. You know, you got to figure out what are the formal, which are the hierarchy, the organizational hierarchy, and then the informal, those things that aren't on the hierarchy, but people have influence, people have knowledge, people are the reference person. You check in with this person. The security guard that you say goodnight to every night, you know, they know what time you leave, they know where that you're going to go pick up your kids, you know, all that stuff. You don't have a formal relationship with them, but it's an informal relationship, and you need to just kind of know the dynamics. Make sense?
Oh
Yes.
yeah, a lot.
Okay.
Thanks
good.
for explaining.
I'm gonna give a sidebar here real quick. People who are introverts and people who have some level of autism, Asperger's kind of thing, they may have more trouble with this, even being able to see informal relationships. So if you know that you are in either one of those camps, you're going to have to give yourself a little bit extra push to identify them. If you're an extrovert, if you love to watch, you're going to be really good at it. So give patience to the people that aren't naturally good at it, and make the adjustments if you need to for your own strengths and the way you're built. DEMA is a BA assigned to the evaluation of a solution that is not delivering value to the level forecasted during the project. So it means there's a limitation. She has gone into the project archives and is reviewing all available project documentation. Why is she doing this? So first, what task is she doing? There is a problem and she's looking at documentation. So which task is this?
Measure solution performance.
I think you're right. And why is she doing that? She is primarily concerned with the solution requirements to ensure current performance measures are relevant. She's reviewing the project objectives to better understand what the solution was supposed to achieve. She's trying to familiarize herself with the stakeholders impacted by the solution. She's working to understand the potential value of the solution.
D.
D is in donkey.
Delta.
Why do we like that one?
Why not A?
Why not A?
Sorry.
Understanding the potential value. Potential value is all through this chapter, isn't it?
Mhm.
So first to understand why it isn't a task, evaluate why solution isn't delivered a value. And then first she wants to understand what the potential value should be to understand what is going wrong. So this is my understanding.
I think I agree with you, but I don't really see the big difference between B and D. They're both reviewing. She's trying to better understand.
So, just because value is in the task and in the
Yeah, it sounds better, but I feel like both of
But
those are
sounds,
kind of
yes,
similar.
sounds similar. I agree.
Let's test it. Let's find out. Potential value is listed as an input to analyze performance measures, which is what the question is asking. The forecasted level is a benchmark against which the solution performance can be evaluated.
Makes sense.
Let's check this one to see what it says. Tempting answer because of the mention of project archives, the potential value may not even be listed in the project objectives, though. But you
So
need potential
we
value.
only defined the task because task is analyze performance measures, then input is potential value. If the task is measure solution performance, its business objective is an input.
Let me put this over and let's talk about that a little bit more, Irina. So, measure solution performance. We've got business objectives here.
What did he do? No.
It happens.
Rich, I think your puppy's acting up.
No.
And then we've got potential value here.
Hmm.
Okay. Ben is a BA working on a newly implemented logistics process for a package supply company. He began gathering performance metrics on such things as how long a process took versus how long to get input from one area to another, defects on the outputs, duplicate steps, number of complaints, etc. The department supervisor complained to Finn that gathering those statistics was a waste of time. She said she would rather he spend his time gathering requirements for automation to support the process. What rationale does Finn offer for his activities? So what is he doing? Gathering performance measures. So is he in measure solution performance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Possible answers. He is working to understand and validate the value that was delivered by the implemented solution. The gathered measurements will support the automation project. He needs to keep an eye out for defects so he can address them in a timely way to ensure customer satisfaction. The information he's needed is inputs to a SWOT analysis for the new automation project. So let's start with the bottom. What do we think of this answer?
I think that we don't need like a specific input for a specific technique. Right, like I'm not gonna use an information to do a SWOT. I can do SWOT on anyone if I really want to.
Right? Everybody agree?
Well,
We don't need inputs for a SWOT analysis here, right?
well, according to Babok, we don't, perhaps, but in
Okay.
real life, of course, we do need a lot of information to do any technique.
Right, but this is specifying it down to a SWOT analysis, not we just need information.
Yeah.
How about C? Does he need to keep an eye out for defects so he can address them and ensure customer satisfaction? I think that may be a small little sliver of what he hopes to do, but he's doing something much bigger than that. Okay. The gathered measurements will support the automation project. What do you think of that one?
It is already implemented.
It looks like they're going to automate a process.
And working on newly implemented. So it is already implemented, so it is already a solution.
They may be going to make an improvement on an existing solution.
But what he's doing, look at the beginning of the question, they already built something. He's trying to figure out how it's working because obviously somebody's not happy with it.
So is
it
he looking?
seems to me that he's trying to do A to figure out what's going on. That would be a baseline.
Yeah.
And then maybe B would apply. But what he's actually doing now
So you feel
is
like A is the
A.
correct answer, Bob? He's
that's
trying to
my
understand and
guess.
validate the value that was delivered by the implemented solution.
Yeah, because the question is why how does Finn, who was doing the analysis on the existing system, justify what he's doing?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree with Bob.
Let's test it. Finn is gathering the actual metrics that describe the performance of the solution in order to measure and analyze solution performance. So if he does all of this work and he says the solution is creating 50 widgets a day, and then you automate it and it creates 500 widgets, he can say what the improvement is. If you automate it and creates 20 widgets a day, you could say, oh, this didn't work. We got to fix something. You know, it's worse. You got a ratio at least.
You need a baseline to figure out the current state, right?
mhm.
So
And
that's what he's doing.
in the real world, we would say if you have a trash process and you automate it, you have an automated trash process. So, right?
Can you see what the
Maybe.
response for B was?
Was there a comment?
Yeah, can you go back and see what the response for B was?
Yes, I'm happy to. This rationale isn't valid because it doesn't explain the ongoing measurement activity.
That was my point. It's the context of the question and the story. You have to. So you're answering these questions on 2 or 3 levels. One is what's in the BABA. 2 is the logic of the question and the situation in the story. So
Okay.
the material in this stuff isn't really that hard. There's a lot of it. So what these testing companies do is they keep you on your toes by making the questions themselves somewhat complicated. So you're testing your knowledge and general intelligence based on kind of the logic of each question. And you have to be aware of both.
Okay. Question 8. A relationship-oriented organization with several physical sites installed a system which includes a feature allowing users to share their screens and call each other through their computers. While assessing the solution, you notice users are still traveling to have face-to-face meetings with each other instead of utilizing this feature. You find they don't even know about it. So question 1, what most likely happened? If you're asking this question and you have a limitation or a problem, and tell me, is this limitation or problem in the solution or outside of the solution?
Outside of the solution.
Outside.
So we know that this is going to be a enterprise limitation, not a solution limitation. So what most likely happened? The users didn't attend the training. It was a feature they never asked for, so are resisting utilizing it. The transition requirements around training was missed or poorly executed, or the user preferred face-to-face meetings.
So
I like
if they didn't know about that, we can eliminate B.
Okay.
And ask. So in the questions, they say they didn't know it.
Yes, they don't know about it, so they can't resist what they don't know about.
Yeah.
I think the same about A and D. They can't prefer something that they didn't even know about.
Right?
Or
So it
yeah,
sounds
I
like
kind of like C.
Yep. It seems
Yeah.
like C is probably the answer. Let's test it. Since the users didn't even know about it, this is most likely the case. Nobody ever educated them that there was a possibility.
Mhm.
Question 2 on the same scenario. What is the BA's next logical step? Submit a recommendation to print instructions and distribute to users as quickly as possible. Submit a recommendation to conduct a virtual training session demonstrating the feature. Immediately ask permission to show the users how to use the feature, knowing they'll spread the word. Add training to your office official recommendation. Submit a recommendation to conduct on-site training sessions with follow-up coaching and mentoring. So now we are in the 5th task, recommend actions to increase solution value. How about A? Would this be the next logical step?
I wouldn't.
All sound logical.
Okay.
Well, who's to say I gotta read the printed instruction?
Yeah. How about conduct virtual training sessions? These people are traveling to do
Then-
things face to face. What do we think of C?
Immediately ask permission. Should use how to use the feature. Why should he ask if permission?
Because the organization that we are in requires us to recommend actions by submitting something.
Mhm.
We can't make the decision on what to do, but we can say this is what we think should be done. And then we have to go through proper channels to get it approved and, you
I
know,
like C
stuff.
better than D.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like D.
What do we like about C?
It's actually
Because you're spreading the word and then doing the training, but with D, I'm not sure if mentoring is part of the process.
Okay,
Okay,
let's test C.
can I ask a question?
Yes.
So there should be some characteristics for the recommendations. I mean, from there, maybe we can understand which one we should select, which kind of recommendations should follow which kind of guidelines. Is there any solid guidelines that we should follow?
The BABOK doesn't identify the format of your recommendation. It could be a business case. It could be something less formal, but you just need to make your recommendation. And then 8.5 recommends actions to increase solution value, gives a list of possible recommendations, including do nothing.
So my question will be, I will need more context to answer this question. Maybe option A can be, in certain circumstances, a better recommendation. No, Bob?
So
What
you are absolutely right. This comes up a lot. These one or more questions can be a little goofy. I think the questions on the actual test will not be this goofy. I was hoping not to repeat that this week, but it's necessary.
So
So-
one of the things that BABOK does say is we want to add value as quickly as possible. It just like it says, we want to reduce complexity if possible. We want to improve communication when possible. So these are just baselines through the entire book.
Sometimes you just have to go with your gut. I
Okay.
mean, do the best you can, but
Okay. What output has a business analyst developed when they can provide a description of the current limitations of the enterprise, including how the solution performance is impacting the enterprise? So when they can do this, what task have they done?
Assess enterprise limitation.
And the output for assess enterprise limitation is?
Enterprise limitation.
Enterprise limitation. It is just that easy. This is the output from that task. The sponsor believes that cultural assessments are of little value. What would be a compelling way to state the case for their need? So a cultural assessment is going to be in assess enterprise limitations also. A cultural assessment will determine if the existing organization is capable of accepting the solution. A cultural assessment will judge the organization's ability and willingness to adapt to cultural changes required for stakeholders to readily adopt solutions. It is the most cost-effective way to develop a communication plan that will ensure awareness and understanding of the solution, or a cultural assessment will determine if the existing organization is capable of accepting a solution. If cultural changes are needed, it will judge the organization's ability and willingness to adapt to those changes.
Maybe D.
D
I
sounds
would say
good.
D.
D seems pretty thorough, doesn't it? Let's test it. That is correct. Did you notice that some of these others were like partials of this, but this had a whole lot more? And I want you to know that cultural assessments are not foolproof. You're doing the best you can. People aren't necessarily going to open up to you and let you be their psychologist and counselor and best friend just because you're trying to do this job. So you're going to do the best you can. You're going to give good solid reasons for your beliefs. You're going to bounce it off a few people you trust, and you're going to go on. It might find that you could do something better later, but you're going to do 80% right every time. When would the technique, oh, I'm sorry, you're going to do 80% right as long as you don't make assumptions, as long as you're not blinded by any cultural limitations that you have or any biases that you have. Cultural biases will blind you if you're not careful about them. And you may find that you have cultural biases that you're not even aware of. But doing cultural assessments is a good way to find that out about yourself. When would the techniques of process modeling, observation workshops, document analysis, and organizational modeling have the most value when assessing enterprise-related obstacles to realizing solution value? So, what task are we on? We are assessing enterprise-related obstacles.
In the question, yeah.
Assess enterprise limitation.
Yep. Okay. And so it's talking about these specific techniques in that task. Would it be, well, look at this. I didn't even look at the answers. Sorry, guys. I just was,
No, no,
I got it wrong.
I can't believe it.
Okay, these techniques would give insight into which stakeholder groups or roles are impacted by a solution in what way. So here's why I got it wrong. I looked at this and identified the task. That wasn't what it was asking. It was asking, how would it help to realize solution value, which would be the stakeholder impact analysis. Does it make sense?
The other thing that throws me off a little bit, being the king of all process modelers, is that the first bit is a bunch of technical stuff that is less about the organization than the process itself. So, so enterprise culture assessment would not really be right. Enterprise limitations, not right. I would be torn between A and C. So I'd be thinking more A, but the back half of that question, enterprise related obstacles, would be stakeholders would point to that, but that's all reading it after the fact. So yeah, this question was a little confusing to me.
This question was $1 million question. I loved it. I mean, isn't it?
One thing
It
that
makes you
really
think,
should have
which
pointed,
is the major thing.
one thing that really should have pointed to stakeholder is when we talk about process modeling, we're talking about who does what or what system does what, but it's usually who. When we talk about observation, it's almost always a stakeholder, right? When we're talking about
Well,
workshops, we're working with
totally
stakeholders.
disagree.
Okay.
Observation is collecting data.
Okay.
See, it irritates me when the Babok uses the word elicitation for gathering all kinds of data. I hate that. I mean, that's what the Babok says, so go with it. For me,
Okay.
elicitation is what you draw out of a person through interviews or whatever. And observation is data collection, it's discovery. And remember, discovery is the nouns and verbs, what's there, what's it doing. Data collection is how's it running, how's it operating, how's it behaving. Those are the adjectives and adverbs.
I'm not sure if you have time. I loved what Bob is saying, but I have another question, Bob. I mean,
Please.
Of course, we might be able to use observation to collect or gather information, but also we can use it as an elicitation technique, because while we are observing, through our observation, we might be able to drive some requirements. I mean, if I ask a user directly, what are your needs? What are the requirements? That sounds more like gathering. But if I'm observing, it is behind the consciousness of the user. Maybe the user, she or he, doesn't know the problem, but while I'm observing, so I'm in fact driving the requirements. So sounds that we can use it also as an
Well, I
technique.
love what you're saying. I think what you're addressing is the idea of iteration. So remember that in my framework, I draw the activities in every phase as a circular loop. And it's find out what's going on, observe, document, obtain feedback, correct, and you're talking about doing that. So you're iterating there to continue gaining more information and more correct information. I actually wrote a blog post on observation, which you can find in my index. So that was even before I started writing up all the ones. Even I wrote that for my study course with Adaptive back in 2017. So that goes way back.
Let me go back to Bob's idea that observation was data collection. According to the Babok, there's two kinds of observation. One is active, one is passive, and we're watching people. The Babok doesn't talk about it the same way Bob does. So for the test, you got to know that when we're talking about observation, we're talking about watching people. Workshops are with people. Document analysis, this is not with people, but typically people are the ones who wrote it. It could be reports, but still, you gotta look at it. And then organizational modeling, it's all about people. So stakeholder impact analysis would have made sense if I'd slowed down and not jumped to conclusions. Yes, Bob.
Again, Thea is right. Always go with the book. It's good to know what the book is saying. Thea is your guide on that. Again, for the 50th time, I don't know how I passed this test because I was thinking the way I think about stuff. And,
But you did.
I had my framework already roughed out. And the whole idea of all these details, I had no clue. I just knew the flow charts.
Which input describes the value that may be realized by implementing a proposed future state? The value that may be realized by implementing a proposed future state. It can be used as a benchmark against which solution performance can be evaluated. Are we talking solution performance measures, business objectives, relationship management, or potential value?
Solution performance measure.
Why do you think so, Tamara?
I'm thinking about the task. I don't recall.
Maybe potential value. Value that may be realized by implementing the proposed future state.
Got the word value here.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the mnemonic, and I'm trying to piece it into forcing it into that mnemonic.
Yeah. And it can be used as a benchmark against which solution performance can be evaluated. Irina suggested potential value. Anybody else?
I go with A, but I mean, it is not, it might, because I know that we are solving the questions from the last knowledge area, but I cannot justify it. But meanwhile, I might be able to justify it this way, that for solution performance measure, we can get help from the future state descriptions as well.
Okay. I've got 2 votes. I need a tiebreaker.
I'd say potential value.
Okay, let's test potential value. And it is correct. Let's see why solution performance measures is not correct. This input provides information on how well the solution is performing, not the value of the solution. So this would be your KPIs, your metrics, but this talks about the value of the solution. What should not be considered when evaluating whether or not a solution should be retired or replaced? So when we're evaluating this part, we're in our last task. Would it be opportunity cost, necessity, necessary, it's necessity, sunk cost, or future investment required? So 3 of these things should be considered. 1 of these should not.
Some cost.
Some cost.
Sunk cost.
Yeah, we spend it and we can't get it back anyway.
You can't get it back. It's not a factor. Emotionally, people are naturally like, I already put $50,000 into that. You got to keep it running. Nope, that's not a factor.
Go with the slam dunk. That was a slam dunk.
That was good. Production personnel have to complete a significant amount of paperwork for each batch of a new product. Much of the paperwork asks exactly the same information, and the worker has to manually enter it on every form. This is contributing to the plant missing its monthly production goals unless it offers overtime, which eats away profit. Melissa is a BA tackling this issue and suggests pre-printing forms with batch information to avoid having to manually enter it. So she is recommending a solution here. What type of recommendation is this? Is it necessity, avoid waste, eliminate redundancy, or reduce complexity of interfaces?
D.
D, yeah.
A, necessity?
No, D.
No.
Oh, D, I'm sorry. I hear like the last half of the letter whenever you say it, and so if you say D for donkey, I get it every time.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
This is the human interface between the worker and the form, but this option involves transferring work in some way. This one would be correct. Eliminate redundancy. So we're eliminating them having to do the same thing over and over. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, it says in the top part, much of the paperwork asks for this exact same information. So that's like a hint right there.
Yep. There is redundant work being done. Redundant,
It's one
unnecessary.
of those things, they may both be similar, but go with the best one.
What might Melissa cite as an additional benefit for the recommendation to help sell it to approvers? Pre-printing will reduce errors related to paperwork by 3%, saving $23,000 annually. I love how specific that is. Employees will see evidence that the company is listening to their complaints and doing something about it. Employee morale will increase, and with it, productivity and quality. Additional benefits aren't needed as the recommendation is straightforward and logical. The paperwork will be easier to read as some workers' handwriting is horrible.
A like apple.
A.
I like how specific that is too, huh? This is a logical answer and not specifically cited, but it's also smart.
Mhm.
I like smart. And third question, congratulations. Melissa's recommendation was accepted. What will she need to ensure happens as a result to measure value? So we're talking about measuring value.
Mhm.
Should she evaluate the solution of the pre-printed labels to ensure that the forecasted value promised is realized? Should she develop the processes related to pre-printed labels? Communicate the decision to production personnel? Should she inspect the labels once printed to gain assurance that the new process fulfills quality standards? So we want to know how she's going to measure value.
A seems like the best option because you're trying to make sure that it actually does what she anticipates it's going to do.
Evaluate the solution once it's implemented. Let's check it. This is what the majority of the solution evaluation knowledge area focuses on: delivery of forecasted solution value. It's really good as BAs whenever we can say, I told you this was going to happen, now it's happened, and you can now trust me more. It's a good thing.
We never do it.
What are the guidelines and tools that are used for the recommend actions to increase solution value task? So we are in the last task. We want to know guidelines and tools. The purpose of the last task: understand the factors that create differences between potential value and actual value, and to recommend a course of action to align them. So guidelines and tools that would do that: would it be business objectives, change strategy, risk analysis results, current state description and solution scope, decision analysis, organization modeling and risk analysis and management, or business objectives, current state description and solution scope? Can we eliminate C?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would go with
Um,
D as the answer.
Why do you like D?
It seems like the better choice, but like I was looking between A and D. I think solution scope is written over and over again in this chapter.
It is.
Yeah.
Let's test D. And you're right. Sometimes explaining yourself helps you remember it even longer. So I ask you to do that some. What term describes the money and effort already committed to an initiative? Is it called additional cost, net present value, opportunity cost, or sunk cost?
Sunk
Already
cost.
gone.
It's gone. It's sunk cost. It's
Thumbs
money and
up,
effort
baby.
already committed. Can't get it back. Which guidelines and tools are leveraged to support assessing solution limitations? So guidelines and tools for this task. Guidelines and tools for assessing solution limitations. I'm going to read the purpose of it. Determine the factors internal to the solution that restrict the full realization value. Would it be risk analysis results, future state description, and solution scope? Change strategy, risk analysis results, and solution scope? Solution scope decomposition, risk mitigation analysis, and change management? Or risk strategy, risk mitigation results, and solution scope implementation? What can we eliminate?
C.
D.
There's no solution scope
Oh.
limit.
Charlie.
Oh yeah. Oh, C we said
C is
too.
in Charlie. Okay.
Because solution scope decomposition,
Mhm.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And then risk mitigation result also not, maybe?
Mm,
Risk mitigation analysis. I don't recall that either.
Yeah.
So we're eliminating C.
And also I think D.
What's wrong with D?
Well, we have risk analysis result, but not risk mitigation results.
Okay.
Mhm.
So those are eliminated. So what is the right answer?
Okay, what we need for solution limitations, change of strategy sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Solution scope sounds reasonable. Risk analysis result sounds also good. Future state descriptions also sounds good, but I go with B.
B.
Yeah, agreed.
B.
And you are correct. Very good.
Can you check A? What is wrong with that?
I will.
Future state description.
Oh.
This isn't in there.
Yeah, if you look on page 175 and 6B is the list.
Right.
How we
Somehow,
can-
whenever I was putting this together and going through and making things different fonts and stuff so I could see them, I must have gotten to just Christmas colors in 8. It just looks like Christmas all over the place. Okay. Val is a BA who's been asked to evaluate a software solution which supports vital business functions. When the software doesn't perform, employees can't perform. Val discovers after analyzing 3 months worth of recent data that the software's transacting ability deteriorates noticeably around lunchtime and significantly every Thursday at 4 p.m. What has Val discovered? So
That is
she's
not-
doing an analysis, and what task is she in?
That is not a good question. It is from the book.
This explains that concept from the book, but tell me what task she's in first.
Solution limitation.
Assess solution limitations. It's possible.
I would think analyze performance measures because she took the measures, she's analyzing them, and this is what she found.
Yeah.
I agree on that.
So Val has discovered, is it a variance, a pattern, a trend, or a theme?
Maybe
Some
two.
of these words sound like they mean the same thing, and they do, but only one of them is the one that Babok wants.
A trend.
I think that, yeah, I think it's trend, although pattern sounds fancy, but I think it's trend too.
It's a trend. The Babok talks about finding, identifying trends.
Actually, I remember this question from the book, so it is very identical question. So why not a pattern? Like how different a trend a pattern is in this question?
Because we
So-
were working on creating a common vocabulary around the world. And so we created a word, and you can use any word you want as long as everybody understands, but we use the word trend.
I'd also call that a variance. So
Mm.
why does it say A and B are wrong?
Val isn't discovering the difference between expected and actual performance, which would be a variance. And yes, he has, but the Babok found uses a different term. Val is a he, guys. I didn't know that. So it is a pattern, but the Babok calls it a
Why does
trend.
it trend? Yeah.
Use the words of the company.
Okay.
Brenda has completed her assessment of the solution limitations and the enterprise limitations following analysis of performance measures. What guidelines and tools will she use in her next task? So her next task, if she's done, I've got to show you this. This is one of the reasons I like chapter 8. 8.1 turns into solution performance measures. Measure solution performance measures, which feeds into 8.2, analyze performance measures, which turns into solution performance analysis. 8.2 feeds into task 3 and solution performance analysis, which is assess solution limitations, which ends up to be solution limitations. Then it gets a little wonky. 8.2 is also in 8.4, assess enterprise limitations, which turns into enterprise limitations. And this is 8.3 and 8.4 that feed into 8.5, which is recommended actions. So now that I went through all that, going back to this, she went through 8.1 and 2. What guidelines and tools will she use in her next task, which is going to be 8.3. I'm sorry, that's not right. She went through 8.3 and 8.4, assess solution limitations and assess enterprise limitations. Her next task is going to be recommend actions to increase solution value, what guidelines and tools, the purpose of that task, understand the factors that create differences between potential value and actual value, and to recommend a course of action to align them. So guidelines and tools, business objectives, current state description, solution scope. Business objective, change strategy, solution scope. Business objectives, current state description, or current state description, solution scope, and change strategy.
Okay.
I heard
an apple. Sorry.
Is what?
A is an apple. I heard some sound, but I couldn't tell what it was. These are the guidelines and tools for recommend actions to increase solution value, the task in which Brenda will be performing next. Guys, you've only got 4 wrong answers so far. This is your first day in this chapter. I'm not saying you're golden, but you're doing really good. Okay, the leaders of a I'm starting over. The leaders of a retail store employing approximately 100 floor personnel have been hearing more complaints from employees during the last 3 months about difficult coworkers, not enough vacation time, scheduling policies, etc. In addition, 3 valuable employees have given their notice during the last 2 months. Raja has been asked to evaluate employee satisfaction. The organization has no current performance measures in place. So he's been asked to evaluate employee satisfaction. What task is he in?
Measure solution performance. Oh no,
No, maybe it's enterprise limitation.
enterprise limitation.
It's beyond the solution. It's simply.
I think you're probably right. I have about 80% confidence that we got the right one. So let's keep going. What is the biggest benefit for choosing for the chosen technique from the... Okay, so this is
Yes.
Watermark doing this thing where they were supposed to give us multiple questions. And the previous question would have been, he's going to use a survey. Now it wants to know what the biggest benefit of the chosen technique from the survey that would provide. So what's the benefit of surveys is what it's asking. It would allow Raja to ascertain if the information elicited from the focus group was representative of all personnel. It's rapid and produces reliable results. It would provide a qualitative baseline from which to measure improvement, or would it provide a quantitative baseline which to measure improvement? So
I think it's, oh, sorry.
Clear, the previous one had workshops as something that you could do. Focus groups as something you could do, or surveys. Survey was the right answer. So we can eliminate this one. What do you think the right answer is?
Memorize these questions well enough to know that.
Maybe B, it is rapid and produces reliable results.
Surveys don't
That's
produce reliable
amazing.
results.
Surveys are quite quick.
What about D?
Quantitative baseline. Let's test it. Okay, that is the correct answer. It would provide a quantitative baseline if you write a survey correctly, and it's an art. Let me show you why this is not the right answer. Surveys are a relatively quick way of obtaining data, but results are only reliable if people answer truthfully, which is one of the weaknesses of the technique of surveys. And you're right, Bob. I've done this a whole bunch of times to be able to memorize all these interactions. Okay, Lewis has been asked to complete a post-implementation evaluation of a new automated system that was recently installed. After reviewing the project and the actual performance statistics, he saw that actual performance was better than the metrics that had been defined, yet there were frequent complaints from end users and management about the usefulness. His final recommendation was that the system be eliminated. Which of the following might have prompted this recommendation? So he's on the 5th task, isn't he?
Mhm.
The original cost benefit analysis completed during the project initiation was faulty and the forecasted benefits were inflated. Although the performance was actually better than the defined performance metrics for the solution may not have addressed the business need for which the project was undertaken and was redundant. Although the performance was actually better than the defined performance metrics for the solution, the end users complained about the new business process that was put in place in conjunction with a new system. Although the performance was actually better than the defined performance metrics for the solution, many of the stakeholders complained about the slow system response time.
Or B, maybe.
You like
Yeah.
B as in boy?
Mhm. So
I
if
agree.
they are complaining, so it's my understanding that solution might not have addressed the business need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, high performance but low value.
Let's test it. This scenario is rare but possible, and it is one of the scenarios cited in the BABOK. K is a BA measuring the performance of a solution. Complaints about the solution have been increasing from end users. She went to the project archives to obtain how the original stakeholders defined acceptable performance. Those criteria didn't seem to be the cause of the complaints, however. Among other things, stakeholders weren't happy with the overall maintainability of the solution. What else could assist Kay in her analysis? So she's trying to figure out why they're unhappy. Would it be functional requirements? Understanding how the original stakeholders define the expected characteristics of the solution? Understanding how the original project objectives map to the business objectives at the time? Perhaps the business changed and the solution is no longer viable, or she should look at the stakeholder requirements.
What criteria? It says the criteria didn't seem to be the cause. So I don't think it's D.
Mhm.
Okay. So you're looking at, she went through project archives to obtain how the original stakeholders defined acceptable performance, but that didn't seem to be the cause. So the original stakeholder information would be stakeholder requirements, right? Good
Mhm.
reasoning.
I kind of like C.
Why do you like C, Michelle?
Because I feel like that could be the problem is they wanted something in the beginning, but then something changed and now it's not working for what they needed.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I go with C as
Think
well.
it. Go ahead.
You like C as well?
Yes.
Oh.
I
Okay.
like B
Why do you like B?
because A is not right. And
Okay.
A is not right because maintainability seems to be the problem. That's a non-functional requirement. So
That's true.
that eliminates A. And
Okay.
it's I think that addresses B more than C.
Okay.
Because C doesn't really answer that mail at all.
How is B different than D?
It kind of is not, and also, maintainability may be something they didn't think about ahead of time. It's something they only realized after the fact. I mean, it's always a thing with any system. It's kind of inherent and assumed. So it's hard to say between B and D. But I
Okay.
would say it's not A or C. That's my guess.
Bob,
Okay.
Bob, I have a question. I think she already did the B. She went into the project archive to obtain how the original stakeholder defined acceptable performance. So she did it already, the B part, isn't it?
Oh, and the question is what?
Interesting. I like it.
Let's test
I
C.
like it. So
And
D.
Bob is right.
Oh my God.
I let you talk me out of it.
I was about to change your your choice. We should not do that during the exam.
Okay, so the correct answer, understanding how the original stakeholders define the expected characteristics solution. This is the definition of non-functional requirements analysis technique. The availability, capacity, maintainability, speed, etc. of the solution. And this one was wrong. There was
Because it made
nothing
it
up
up.
here that talked about the business changed.
My question is, in the question, it seems that she already did B.
Yeah.
But one of the things that the BABOK talks about non-functional requirements is they're hard to define. And it's real easy to miss something. You have to pretty much think about what is the future going to be whenever you're doing non-functional requirements.
Non-functional requirements are so functional requirements are what a solution does. Non-functional are what a solution is, and many of those adjectives are called illatives. So usability, availability, maintainability, there are other ones. There's actually a giant list of them on the article on Wikipedia. It's huge, so
Right.
worth looking into.
But having knowing this definition for non-functional requirements analysis would have saved us. Recognizing it.
It still kind of doesn't make sense pretty much because I'm sorry, I don't know your name, Mr. 5452, but basically because of what he said, that one sentence is kind of what B is saying, and that wasn't the cause of the complaint.
Sometimes these questions are just goofy. So the value you'll get out of this is the discussion and knowing where things are in the book.
Right.
I'll never forget this one, I guess.
I can guarantee that you will not get that question wrong ever again. Okay, so here's some truths from my perspective. Watermark tests are harder than the real test. We think that you need to get 72% or better on every single knowledge area. This is our first time through this chapter and we got a 76. What I'd like to do is propose this and we can evaluate later. I'd like to stay on chapter 8 for 2 more weeks and go through it. And then I'm going to say, let's do chapter 8 and chapter 7 together and see if that works. And if we need to adjust, we can, try for that following week. And then if we get chapter 8 and chapter 7 good, and we're making good grades on both of them, because it will give us a breakdown by knowledge area. It will say what score we're getting by knowledge area and how many questions we had in each one. If we do chapter 8 and chapter 7 really well, we'll add chapter 6. And we can adjust as we need to, but then we'll just keep going on. Does that sound like a good plan? Realizing adjusting evaluation is going to be ongoing?
I'm thinking, shall we do it only for 1 week? I mean, let's see if our performance is satisfactory, we might not need 2 more weeks. I mean,
And with that, just to add that, Tia, the conference is in 2 weeks, so we have 1 week and then we have a week
That's
off.
right. That's
So that
right.
might, yeah.
We have 1 week and then we will not, actually, those people who want to be here for that Thursday while we're in conference, one of my previous students and CBAP certified people is going to take over this class. So you can continue. We'll just say we're going to do chapter 8 for 2 weeks. That way she's not having to try to figure out what we're doing. And then the week after the conference, I'm going to be traveling again on that Thursday. I'm going to Cincinnati, and she's going to be taking over then. It's Esther, if y'all know Esther. Esther, she speaks a little fast, but she knows what she's talking about. So you're just going to have
It's
to listen.
awesome. You'll
She's
love
good.
her.
Yeah, you'll be fine. But I will be back the following week. So that's what the schedule is right now. Does anybody have any questions? I encourage you to look more deeply into the elements for each of these tasks. I think that's where we had our most problems. Understanding what the elements are, and let me show you 2 things here. When we were talking through the elements, you've got performance measures, collect performance measures. You need to understand the definitions of these really well. And then when we get down to recommendations, you need to understand the difference of these. If I were you, if I were doing this all over again, I would look at one and say, okay, the definition of this one is this. So let me think of a scenario that this makes sense to me. You know, put it into a scenario and then go to the next one and do it that way. Because if you connect it to a scenario, it's not just going to be this string of words that in our real world we have meanings for. Connect it to a scenario for the Babok company. Okay. And I'm going to show you one more thing. I did this a while ago and it's the first time it's ever worked. I'm going to assume that Copilot has just gotten a little bit better. I had this up. I opened up Copilot. I did not add my Babok into it. And I just said, per this document, what is the definition of this term? And it gave me a really pretty thorough definition. So you've got a new tool to be able to search your Babok or anything else and get it to give you information. Remember, it hallucinates periodically. I made a post on LinkedIn about a week ago. AI is your new assistant. He's a high school intern. His name is Chet. He's really excited to help you, but he doesn't always know what the rules are. So sometimes he'll make up stuff trying to impress you, and he will also tell everybody else all your business. So only tell him what you want him to know that he can tell everybody else. Remember, he's trying his best, and you've got to give him very specific instructions because he doesn't have all the experience that you do. So you and Chet have fun, but you can use Chet now to study the Babok. Okay? Any questions? Y'all doing good with this? I think you're doing good. Those of you who are answering, I can tell what you know. So we're doing good there. You think you're doing good?
Not yet.
I want to remind you that there are some of you in this class that are perfectionists. You demand extreme things from yourself that if it were anybody else, you would not. Give yourself a grace and the ability to just say, okay, this is what I can do today. Tomorrow, we'll do something more. Don't beat yourself up. It doesn't help you. Okay? Have I told you the story about the getting ready for a marathon and hurting yourself at the starting line?
I haven't heard it.
No, I haven't.
Well, I'm going to tell you one more time, just in case I haven't told you. Pretend that you have been practicing for a marathon. You've been exercising right. You've been eating right. You've been stretching. You had a coach. You've been paying money. You have taken time out of your day, out of your week, taken your life away from everybody else, and you're preparing for this marathon. If you were to go up to the starting line of the marathon, prepared to do the thing that you've been practicing for, Would it make any sense for you to take out a knife and stab yourself in the thigh? It's ridiculous, right? I mean, you're hurting yourself. Every time you beat yourself up, you're stabbing yourself in the thigh. Not only are you stopping yourself at the starting line, you're making it difficult for you to move forward. You're making it difficult for you to do the thing that you have been practicing to do. So every time you study, every time you attempt to do something, if you realize that you're hurting yourself, stop. You wouldn't treat anybody else that way. You wouldn't let anybody else treat themselves that way. You would tell them, stop it. Don't do that. So treat yourself like somebody you love. And we're going to get through this together, okay? All right. I will see y'all next week.
All right. Thank you. Enjoy your conference and time off.
Oh, are you coming to the conference, Michelle? BBC?
I will not be there this year.
Well, who is going to be there?
Me, Aaron, and Robin.
Okay, the three of y'all. I expect that we're probably going to have some opportunities as we have in the past to meet for breakfast and stuff like that. So let's find out where y'all are going to be and we can do that. Are y'all staying at the hotel?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not staying at the hotel because I'm cheap. And so I'm going to be like a mile away. So I will be walking in or taking a Uber or something to get there. But we'll figure it out and get some time to connect and make better relationships, okay?
Absolutely. Yep. That's going to be great.
Okay. Thank you all very much. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. See you later, Bob.
Yep. I'm trying to